Hi there, it's Nikki Ramirez here with HRAnswers.org. I wanted to provide just a little bit of information and guidance on a question that I'm getting quite often in these last few weeks. So the question is, how do I calculate a full-time equivalent or an FTE in my business? And so I thought I would just put together a quick presentation because without an example, it's a little bit hard to follow. So thanks for coming together. And if you have questions about how to calculate FTEs in your business or help developing a workplace, workweek policy, things like that that we'll talk about during this quick session, please feel free to reach out anytime. You can find me at HRAnswers.org, or you can find me on LinkedIn just about every day of the week. All right, so let's jump in and let's talk about how to calculate an FTE within your business. So really quickly, before I show you the math of it, let's just remember that calculating an FTE is important for different reasons. Sometimes there's a rule or a regulation related to employment or payroll or employee benefits that we have to come up with this FTE calculation to determine if we're subject to a rule or regulation. Also, if your company engages in tip pooling or tip sharing for your employees, the FTE calculation might be helpful as well. One of the biggest reasons that we are looking at this calculation lately is because under the new CARES Act passed here in April of 2020, employers who wish to seek forgiveness for certain loan principal under the Payroll Protection Program are going to need to be able to calculate and compare their FTEs at a time in the past and during the loan forgiveness period. So you can reach out to a financial expert like my friend Hannah Smolinski if you have questions about loan forgiveness, but I'm just going to share with you now how to calculate that FTE. So let's remember that FTE calculation is really all about hours worked. It's not a head count, and it's not really about your number of employees. So in order to calculate FTE, I've broken down the steps into 3 important steps. There are lots of maybe sub-steps, but let's take a look at number 1. First thing, we need to develop a policy. So lots of times when I'm working with clients on their custom employee handbooks or custom policy project, we want to use our business industry, our business model within our company, and we want to come up with a policy, a set standard policy that we publish to our employees to let them know how many hours per week on average do full-time employees work. So for the purpose of our time together here in this example, our FTE, one FTE or one full-time employee is a 30-hour per week employee. And we think that under the CARES Act loan forgiveness provisions, that 30 hours is probably going to be the right number to use. 30 hours is a full-time employee under the Affordable Health Care Act, and so that's why we're starting there. But you can use any number within your business. If you're calculating for the purpose of COBRA, figuring out if your business is subject to COBRA, you'd use a 40-hour work week maybe. But anyway, so our policy here is 30 hours is one FTE, or a 30-hour on average per week employee is a full-time employee. Second thing we need to do, we need to look at the monthly hours that our employees are working if they're part-time. So full-time equivalents that are full-time employees, of course, count as one FTE. And then anybody who's part-time in our business, we have to figure out with just a little bit of calculation, how much do they add up to together? So that's what we're going to be looking at next, okay? And we're remembering that multiple employees that are part-time, when put together, may calculate out to one FTE. So let's take a look. First thing we're going to do is review our roster. So in our company, we have 5 full-time employees that are working their 30 hours per week. And so Luis, Sandra, Jessica, Ahmed, and Johnny, they are all full-time employees. And so if we had no part-time employees, the calculation would be so easy and it would be over. But lo and behold, we have this great team of part-time employees that help us to run our successful business. And so what we're looking at here is that we have Hannah, Jason, Casey, Kendra, Gabby, and Chris. And Hannah and Jason average 20 hours per week each. Casey, Kendra, Gabby, and Chris average 10 hours per week, or a total altogether of 80 hours per week on average for these part-time employees. So let's keep that part-time roster handy, and let's remember that what we need to do is just break it down into a couple of simple groups, and that will help us to calculate our FTEs. So Hannah and Jason are both in this 20 hours per week on average bucket or roster. And so all we're going to do is say we have 20 hours per week times 2 employees. So we have a total of 40 hours per week between Hannah and Jason. We divide it by our number of hours in our policy and get the total of 1.3, and then we round down. Now, important to note that you always round down, even if the calculation maybe ends up being 1.6 or 1.8 or whatever your calculation is, we always round down in the FTE calculation. So then I take my 4 remaining employees and I put them in my bucket of 10-hour per week employees. So 10 hours per week times these 4 employees, again, equals 40 hours per week on average. And I take that 40-hour total, divide it by my 30-hour FTE policy, which again, totals out to be 1.3, and I round it down. And the last step is simply to add it all up. And so what we'll do here is, of course, make our list of full-time employees. That was easy. So we had 5 FTEs on our full-time employee roster. And then beyond that, we have our part-time FTE calculation results, which add 2 more FTEs onto our roster. So total FTEs in our organization for the purpose of this sample calculation is 7 FTEs. So again, it's important to know how to do this quick and simple calculation so that you are able to establish whether your business might be eligible for loan forgiveness, or if you're subject to certain rules and regulations, or if you want to split tips, bonuses, or other perks out for your employees based on how much they work with the company. So this is helpful. And of course, leaving a warm invitation for you to reach out and be in touch if there's anything that I can do to help you be more successful in your business. Our team is here to help uncomplicate HR for you. So thanks for coming by, and absolutely let me know what questions you have.